Well, we're a little bit over a week from the Breeders' Cup World Championships 2025 edition at the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club, and we're going to get a little bit of a head start. We'll talk about the Classic. We'll talk about the Turf. The Mile next week. We got those planned. We got a special guest for those. But first things first, we're going to talk about the Juvenile a little. Talk about handicapping one of the favorites in there, stretching out to 2 turns for the first time. And then we're going to get a little bit of an early look at the Breeders' Cup Distaff, maybe who you should bet. Kind of thinking ahead. Is it a race where we can beat the favorite or not? We'll talk about it next. Bailey and I on Horse Sense.
Welcome back to another episode of Horse Sense. As always, I am Bailey Armour, joined alongside world famous stand-up comedian, the one and only Scott Shapiro, who will in fact be here all week. And it is a week out, well, a week and a day, a day or so, depending on when you watch this, from the 2025 Breeders' Cup World Championship. So that's what we're going to dive into, like Scott mentioned in our cold intro there today, this week and next week. This week will be dedicated to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and the Breeders' Cup Distaff, taking an early look at those now that the pre-entries are out. And then next week, we'll cover the Classic and the Mile with a special guest to be announced on that. So I'm very excited and looking forward to next week's episode. Now, speaking of things to look forward to, we've got quite a slew of promotions going on this week. It is the last week in our Breeders' Cup Bankroll Builder series this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you aren't familiar with that, check out the promotions page on Xpressbet.com/promotions, or just click the promos button there on the homepage or in the app or the desktop website, mobile web, however you choose to get your wagers in. The information will be there so you'll know. 1 race per day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 1 specific race, that is, on the promotions page. If you bet $25 in single race wagers, so your win, play, show, exacta, try, super, etc., in that race, then you'll unlock a $5 credit that'll be deposited into your account on Breeders' Cup Friday. So we've got all week to tally all of that up. And that's been going since Keeneland opening weekend, since the beginning of the month here, and then all that'll be unlocked on Friday. So this is your last chance this weekend. In addition to that, kind of another in-house promo is the 10 times points on the Sunset 6, which is the last weekend for that as well, with Santa Anita closing on this weekend. So that'll wrap up this weekend as well. The final 10 times points offer there. A couple other things industry-wide. It's Breeders' Crown weekend Breeders' Crown final weekend. They had their eliminations last week, and then in the harness space is their big race this Saturday night, late post time. So I'm going to have to stay up for those because the late pick 5 on that card comes with a 1 million first rewards points hit and split. And I know that Scott has played in some of those promotions as well and has done pretty well in those point splits. So you got to get in while they're hot.
Yeah, I won't be staying up late really ever, but especially that's not my forte. But definitely those rewards points are worthy of cashing in for real money. So don't just think of them as a souvenir by any stretch. Looking forward to the release of the wager guide for the Breeders' Cup World Championships. Jeremy Plunk and crew, Nate Dogg, working on that behind the scenes. And that'll be have our work as well as Jeremy's and a lot of the other first team. We got the final run of BCBC qualifiers on Saturday and Sunday. There's $1,000 BCBC qualifiers the final 2 days of the Santa Anita meet. So big last chance to get into one of the biggest, if not the most crowned tournament of the year. If I could win any tournament, I know the NHC gets you an Eclipse Award and more money. But the BCBC amongst horse players, that's the real betting one, not just mythical. So to me, I think it's
a good one.
The crown jewel, even though, like I said, you don't make as much money. And then really excited for my spaces next week, taking a break leading up to the Breeders' Cup to prepare for that. But it'll be Travis Stone and Doug Knockman, 2 of my regular guests on. So looking forward to a 3-way conversation there that hopefully will be a good final piece to the puzzle for everybody in terms of handicapping. And looking forward to diving into the Breeders' Cup with you starting in just a moment. Well, as we mentioned, we're going to get rolling with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, one of 5 Breeders' Cup World Championship races on. Do they still call it Future Stars Friday? I'm not sure if they do, but
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. It's kind of catchy, so I understand. And the juvenile is the centerpiece, because it's kind of it's not the first Derby points race, but it's the first national big scene race where we start to think about next year's Kentucky Derby. And I thought, a little bit further out than a lot of the previews of this race will be, not knowing the post positions and whatnot, but we do know, the field for the most part. Would be interesting to talk about a horse, one of the horses in here that's going to take a lot of money, and he's stretching out for the first time. So thoughts on you from your perspective, and then me from my handicapping perspective of, the chances of Brant getting 2 turns, because he's likely to be a significant second choice in here. I was looking overseas, and they had Ted Naffy at 6-5 and Brand at 7-2. I would think it might come a little closer together over here in America with the Baffert factor, especially. But it's interesting because, there's only a couple of horses, 2 horses in here that have not gone the 2 turns. Sometimes there's more. You've got Comport, who went the 1-turn mile in the Iroquois and just missed. And you've got Brant, who was the one we're going to focus on, but to a degree, who has just went to 7 furlongs in the Del Mar Futurity, and he's been great. Whereas Ted Naffy already answered the 2-turn question. And one of the things that, I'm going to talk about, and maybe you will as well, is pedigree. And that's only one piece of the puzzle, because if you look at Ted Naffy, you wouldn't have thought that he would pass his 2-turn test with flying colors, being, the dam side is of old fashioned, into mischief, can go, whatever way, but the bottom side, very sprinty. So take the pedigree stuff for what it's worth. But, what are your thoughts in general when you're handicapping, what you look for, in horses trying 2 turns for the first time? And then throw it back to me, and then I'll get your thoughts on Brand specifically.
Okay, deal. No, I definitely think that pedigree is probably part of the, I guess pie chart is the best analogy that I would say. Like when I'm looking at these different factors, especially when it comes to 2-year-old races, I'm looking at pedigree, like you just mentioned. Ted Naffy's female family is mostly sprinty, but obviously he's already answered that question. So that kind of brings that down in the hierarchy of things that are most important to me that I'm looking for. Then I would probably look at the trainer's historical training pattern. Obviously, we know that Bob Baffert loves a sprinter route, right? And sprinter route is a pretty classic angle that has been tossed around here. 7 furlongs to me, this is another one of my weird, like when we talked about horizontals and verticals, and I don't know what it is, but 7 furlongs doesn't feel like a true sprint to me. I mean, that's only an 1/8 short of a full mile, and then it's a route, but
it's about the amount of turns more than anything.
Yeah. And they'll probably understand, but I don't know. It's just like a weird linguistic thing that I don't love. The fact that it was already at Del Mar, though, probably gives me a little bit more confidence than if it was another track, since he's a little bit more familiar.
Well,
again, that
that's
could just be a me thing.
Specifically, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
What about? Is there anything? I kind of wanted to pick your mind though a little bit on just like,
oh boy,
on the, well, if you're watching workouts, in a general sense, is there anything that would tip you off to thinking a horse, hey, that horse will want more ground? Like, I know, like a long stride, some people are good at looking at stride. Some people might look at the mental, is there any of that? Because I know a lot about the animal itself.
Yeah, so that brings me to a really good point. I yesterday when I was doing my handicapping, watched his most recent workout, I believe as the time of we're filming. It was on October the 18th. Out there, you can watch it on First TV. If you just search Brant's name in the homepage, it'll pull up all of his historical workouts. Just watch that most recent one where he worked with another contender in here, Litmus Test. And Litmus Test is a much bigger horse than Brant is. And that's something that we've also talked about before ahead of the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland on an episode a couple weeks back. But Brant runs much flatter because he's a much smaller horse, right? So he's a little bit more tactical. And as the 2 riders are going through the work, they started at like a little different point basically and finished. Litmus Test finished just about a second slower and should have been a lot slower behind. But like when they finally start asking Brant, the exercise rider goes to the left stick and asks him, and he's like, okay, got it, no problem. And so suddenly gets really, really tactical. And in the gallop out, and that looked like he wanted more ground and kind of stuck to the second turn
is not
in the work.
So the size
No. I mean, when breeders are at the sales looking at horses like this, I mean, take a horse like Justify. Justify is every bit of almost 17 hands, right? Like he's a really big horse, but yeah, stack them up, 17 of them right in a row. You get a horse like that. But with these taller horses comes, I guess, a greater chance for a horse like Vekoma who starts to paddle out, right? Like their legs, they just get so long. So a gritty horse that listens to his rider, that is a little bit more tactical. If they're on the smaller side, personally, I'm okay with that. And all of those boxes for me are checked in brand.
Yeah, I liked what you said. That I mean, I've always heard throughout the years. I don't have the visual part because I don't know the animal like you in by any respect. But I've always heard that it's as much a mental thing, especially
Mhm.
early in the career at a mile and a 16th. When you're talking a mile and a quarter, things like that, it might be a little different. But just being smart enough at this point to be able to not blow the turn and be able to, because the turn is not a straightaway, right? I mean, the straightaway is the fastest horse just runs the fastest, right?
Exactly. They have to drop that inside shoulder and really like be a little bit more in tune with their body. And sometimes for larger horses, that's hard to do, right? Like you think about sometimes, taller people are a little more lanky, a little more awkward, especially at this 2-year-old stage. But it's in their nature to want to run with each other. I mean, if you look at thoroughbreds out in the paddock in Kentucky, out on the farms, like they run in herds. So a horse already like this, and just watching him kind of lock onto that horse and stick through that turn, I was much more confident than I was before I saw the workout. So I highly recommend going and watching that. And look at other places that do like workout analysis and stuff. We're not the only people that can speak to that. So there's other people that can give that workout a grade and things like that. I would not go so far as to give a grade or anything. I can just tell you what I see from a horseman's perspective.
And that's enough for me. I'm not a big workout reports guys, because if you look at 3 or 4 different ones, you might get different opinions.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I
so
respect what those
subjective.
guys do, but I'd rather read the comments than worry about the grade. Like who they worked with, how they did it, things like that. But anyway, a couple things that I look at, I look at the pedigree first and foremost, and then as you met, what you mentioned, and then the second part is the trainer. Not necessarily, I mean, we know that Bob, sprint to a route. I mean, Bob Effort does that with so many horses,
Yeah,
so
kind of his
you're going to get a lot of his different runners in there. But we know Bob Effort is capable, and especially it's very clear when he knows what this it was a $3 million horse. He was really good, and he was 4 to 5 on debut, and he won the Del Mar Futurity. Bob has the plan totally etched out for this horse. They even skipped, the prep, 2 sprints to a route. So all of that are pros. Then you look at the pedigree. Gun Runner, we obviously know, strong. And this horse is a half to Papa Cap and Bapio are both 6-figure earners. I would argue, even though Papa Cap, I think, hit the board of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, that he was a little better. More of like, I don't think I loved him going long. Good, precocious horse. And Bapio, I think, was a turf horse more. But I think, when and I'll throw it to you after, and I don't know who I'm going to end up betting in this race. I think, we have a little bit of time, and I think post positions, I know you would agree, will matter. But I have a real hard time knocking Brant in terms of, the added ground here, the 2 turns, which is kind of, what we're trying to get to the bottom of. But how do you feel about that?
Me a year ago probably would have done an exacta box, which is the lamest possible wager of you could do of these 2 short price horses, right? Of Ted Nafi over Brand. But I'm gonna try to play the way that I think about it now is
I rolled you, so when you see it on the video,
then I'll see, because I looked away for 1 second. But no, after listening to all of your tips and working on it, I am now Ted Nafi over Brant and Litmus Test. Because I still really like that litmus. Yes. Because I still really like that litmus test horse a lot.
Okay. Well, I look forward to getting more information from you as we get closer. If we're finding out your pick, I'm not going to get more information like I'm going to email you. I'm going to talk to you about it. But I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'll just throw out there a couple other horses that we didn't mention before we move on. That might be, that are going to be pretty pricey. Blackout Time finished second to Ted Nafi. He's a really good horse. I don't know if but his pedigree, definitely there. I just watch him. To me, he looks like a 2-turn horse. And then Trepido was really good last time.
Just about to ask you, because I got a tip this morning from the one and only Dustin Fabian that JP is pretty keen on Intrepido. I'm like, what am I missing here?
Time. Yeah, he picked him last time.
Mm.
And he was much the best. Don't let the 3/4 of a length fool you. He was boxed in and he barely got out, and when he did. So those are the ones that are interesting. You know, the Ted Nafi, you just have to ask yourself, is maybe the pedigree going to catch up with him shipping out? But man, he has been so good. It's just very hard this far out to say I'm definitely against Ted Nafi. Well, Bailey, we lost your friend the Grizzly for this year's Breeders' Cup Distaff after that poor effort. You jinxed her by going to Keeneland, apparently.
I did. It's all my fault.
So while the Classic, which we'll talk about next week, of course, the big race, which one of the best Classics I can remember. I'd have to think you being a little more than half my age would agree. But the Distaff is not quite as strong. The females did not live up to the same expectations as the males this year. But I think it's an intriguing betting race. Looks like there's going to be a full field here for it. And the field is likely to be led by one Seismic Beauty for my racehorse, for one Bob Baffert, who we've gotten a lot of mileage out of. And that's what happens when you win a lot of races out west for the Breeders' Cup. Seismic Beauty likely to go off somewhat of a prohibitive favorite. From there, I think you'll also see Nitrogen, the Medaglia d'Oro filly, who will take on Older for the second time after failing against Jin Jin, but doing so with Jin Jin having the better trip in there in the Spinster. She's listed at 4-1 overseas. Take that for what it's worth. And then you have the third horse that's likely to take some support in Darth Vader. And then I think you got a lot of pretty big prices in here. So, before we dive into the analysis of it, just any quick thoughts on, what you think of this group compared to maybe the Classic.
Oh God, quick thoughts. I don't know if any of my thoughts are ever quick. No, I think definitely with the retirement of Torpedo Anna, this is one that I am slightly less looking forward to than maybe I was before to see Anna run back. But I mean, it's definitely time for her. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other, really nice fillies and mares in this division. I hate to say it and stick to my well, it's not even really a mythical Baffert double there, but you're going to have a hard time getting me out of betting Seismic Beauty, which is why we picked this segment instead, so that I can figure out and help our audience alongside how to make some money playing Seismic Beauty over other horses, because who's going to go with her?
Well, that's what we want to talk about before we talk about how we, early thoughts on how we want to attack the race. The pace is big because of Anna, sorry, Anna. Sorry, Grizz. If Seismic Beauty has things her way, she could be very tough. She has, but she will. She's had things way her way in the last couple, 5-horse field and a 6-horse field. Now she needs double the field. And you really don't think there's anyone that can go with you, like Jin Gun? I mean, there's horses that have enough tactical speed, right? To like put Scottish Lassie's got some speed. No?
Yeah, I mean, got some, sure, but like there's no horse as powerful and as fast as she is, in this field anymore.
So what you're telling me is, you're going to be you think she's like a single type.
Yes.
Just playing like a pick 5.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and I have the opposing view here, because she rode a good rail in the Clement L. Hirsch as the even money favorite, just had things all her way out there. Santa Margarita, same deal. Easy peasy with 5 horses. Now you're meeting, again, I don't think there's any world beaters in here, but there's a quantity of horses. I just don't see her having things very easy. And then also, this is a step up. I know I just think she's going to get over bet. I think she can win, but I think the last couple of races are just like, we don't really know how she compares to this group. She's never faced anybody in the field.
She ran a 110 buyer in the Hirsch, and Sierra Leone ran a 109 in the Whitney. She's put up 2 back-to-back triple-digit buyers. Wow. When is the last time you saw that from a filly like this?
Boing.
Not in the rest of this field.
Boing.
You think she's due for a bounce? Are you kidding?
I don't know. I was just playing you with your. I don't know. I'll have to see the.
More animated, clearly.
I just think those races are a little dressed up. She might win easy, But I mean, she really had things her way against small fields of horses she was supposed to beat. So
I will give you that. I will give you that.
yeah. So that's where it's, from a gambling perspective. So you wanted to ask about though more, you're going to key her on top. You wanted to talk about some, early talk about how to maybe think about wagering on it from there.
I would love to talk about how to wager on it from there if we can quite this early, which is brings me to a good point. Our Breeders' Cup promotion, I don't even think I mentioned that in the intro here, is a $20,000 exactathon that is $10,000 per day with a base prize pool of $7,500. The full details will be up online, but this would be one of the races that I'm trying to play and chase that exactathon in, so I need a horse to play underneath her, which is why I'm so grateful that we get to spend this hour together every Thursday. And you can be the what's the Dr. Evil and the other guy from Austin Powers. I'm not sure which one of us is which, but I know that it's one of the two.
Wrong dude, but
the people in the comments can let me know.
Well, the main thing is if you're keying her on top, I would play a cold exacta unless it's 2 long shots. Then maybe you could play 2 long shots. And when I say long shots, I don't mean Jin, the 4th choice, or
you mean long shots then?
Yeah. So I mean, have you thought about who you might? I mean, who you like or who you might,
Yeah, I have.
Speed, right? So that might play into it. No.
I know, I would like to get your take on the internationals because I don't know as much about them, about the Japanese horses.
Far out on those either.
No, I don't think so. I think the timing is just not quite there yet. So we'll be looking for more there. This might be a lukewarm take, as we have put out here before. I don't love Nitrogen that much. I like Nitrogen much more on turf. Did she win a grade 1 on dirt in the Alabama? Absolutely, she did. But like all of her major career successes have not come over this course. I don't think it's wrong to try by any means.
Of course. Oh, you
this
mean
one
dirt.
specifically? Yeah, dirt. Yeah, she hasn't raced over this dirt, and she has very little experience on dirt in general. Now, if it was gonna be run on the East Coast and it was gonna pour down rain and the slop, sure, I would be, much happier with her performance there. But it's Del Mar; it's not going to. So I would probably, if I was trying to really find a value play here, because Size and Beauty is going to be so short, she would not be one that I turn to. You already nicked me on Darth Vader and said she was going to be the 4th choice. So I need your help. Third choice.
I don't know. Like, we're doing this a little far out. Like I said, I got a lot more diving in to do. The one thing though, in my initial handicapping is I just found Seismic Beauty to be a horse that I think is just going to get over bet. I won, she got the mile in an 8th, but did so against Santa Anita in a 5-horse field. I don't love, she's bred to get the distance.
Sure.
So to me, that's where where I'm starting from. And it's interesting for you. I mean, I know we're not able to really pinpoint an exacta, but it's good when you have a horse that you're, it's better when they're a bigger price, but it's good when
I wish.
So you can start to kind of focus both your horizontal and your vertical wagers around. And, we knew that this was, we obviously knew when we came into this that we didn't have all the information at hand. We kind of wanted to discuss it from getting started for those that are kind of just diving into the past performances now, or listening to us and then diving in. We thought it might be a useful conversation to get things started. The ones that, this far out, I'm looking at maybe trying to beat her with. Darth Vader, as we mentioned. I'll say this for Nitrogen. I don't really, she keeps getting better, faster progressively. It's been a long year, but she's gotten faster on dirt, and she was 3 wide most of the way on a day where the inside was good at Keeneland. So I'm a little more forgiving of that effort. And then finally, Cliquo is kind of a filly I've been a fan of now. She takes on a lot tougher. I know she has a grade 1 win coming in, but that's against just 3-year-olds and the lower level grade 1s. No offense, Parks, but so she didn't relax great in that race. Still learning, and was a little freshening. I think she's got to move forward in her. So those are the ones I'm looking at. There'll be plenty of content from yours truly up between the Wager Guide, the blog, and all the other videos that I do. And I'll have a final pick, of course, if not sooner. Available on the First Call podcast a week from now, with Jeremy Plunk, who may or may not be appearing on this show next week.
As always, thank you so much for watching another episode of Horse Sense. I'm Bailey Armour and was joined alongside my very, very good friend Scott Shapiro today, taking an early look at some of these big Breeders' Cup races, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Excuse me. If you haven't already signed up with us at FirstBet and Xpressbet, you can sign up with the code HC250 to start earning some bonus cash as we make our way into Breeders' Cup weekend next weekend. And the big promotion there will be a $20,000 exactathon, $10,000 in bonus cash per day, with the full details to be announced on our promos pages. Make sure you check those out as well for all of the stuff that's going on this weekend. Like I mentioned in the intro, Breeders' Crown out at Woodbine Mohawk Park, the 10 times points on the Sunset 6, and then the last weekend of that Breeders' Cup Bankroll Builder. Let us know in the comments, and if you guys are rag sheets people, let me know what Seismic Beauty's number are on the rags, because that's one that I haven't looked into, but willing to hear you out on any and all arguments in the Breeders' Cup Distaff here to find my price exacta horse. And we'll see you next time for the Breeders' Cup edition of Horse Sense.